Hey everyone, tonight we're going on a whisper-quiet journey behind the towering vermilion walls of one of history's most enigmatic places, the Forbidden City. Imagine yourself stepping through the Meridian Gate, not as a tourist with a camera, but as a minor courtier acutely aware of the rigid protocols that govern every breath, every glance, and especially every meal. The air here isn't just filled with history. It's thick with secrets, intrigue, and the tantalizing aroma of forbidden delights. You quickly realize that in this sprawling palace complex, where the emperor's whims dictated all, even a simple snack could be a matter of life or death, or at least a significant breach of etiquette. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a week here without accidentally offending someone powerful by munching on a rogue candied hawthorn. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Your likes and follows help this channel grow, and they let me know you're keen for more journeys like this one. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've just entered the sacred sprawling grounds of the Forbidden City, the Imperial Palace of China, for over 500 years. This isn't just a collection of buildings, it's a meticulously ordered universe, where every detail from the color of a roof tile to the cut of a sleeve signified status and adherence to tradition. A stidu, mainstream historical fact you'll quickly grasp is that the emperor's diet and meals were subject to extraordinary scrutiny and ritual. Every dish was tasted for poison, every ingredient carefully sourced, and every meal a performance of imperial power. So you can imagine how tightly controlled anything related to food, especially outside these formal settings, would have been. Now for a quirky tidbit. Despite this intense regulation, courtiers, eunuchs, and palace maids, just like anyone, harbored personal cravings and longed for familiar tastes from their hometowns. Imagine being surrounded by incredible imperial cuisine, yet secretly pining for a simple street snack or a dish your grandmother used to make. This human desire for comfort and personal pleasure, even in the face of strict rules, led to a vibrant underground world of secret snacks. It was like a covert culinary operation happening right under the emperor's nose, a rebellion of the taste buds. Historians still argue whether the extreme secrecy surrounding these private snacks was primarily due to strict imperial prohibitions against unauthorized eating, or if it was also a reflection of the courtiers' limited access to personal funds and a desire to differentiate their tastes from the formal court cuisine. Perhaps it was a mixture of both, born of both scarcity and a yearning for individuality. You walk through a quiet courtyard, the air heavy with the scent of blossoming magnolias, but also, if you pay close attention, a faint whiff of something savory, something that doesn't quite fit the grand imperial menu. You realize that beneath the layers of silk robes and strict court protocol, human nature still thrived. These courtiers, powerful as some might be, were still people with cravings, habits, and a desire for small personal indulgences. The official imperial kitchens provided vast, elaborate banquets, but they rarely catered to individual preferences or the spontaneous craving for a specific comfort food. It was all about grandeur and symbolism, not about satisfying your sudden hankering for, say, a spicy wonton. The very structure of palace life encouraged this clandestine consumption. Meals for courtiers were often set scheduled affairs, not spontaneous. If you felt hungry between meals or craved something particular, you couldn't just pop down to the imperial pantry. Thus, the need for private provisions arose, transforming the Forbidden City into a labyrinth of hidden treats and hushed culinary exchanges. This subtle undercurrent of forbidden deliciousness permeated the otherwise rigid atmosphere, a constant tempting whisper in the vast silence of the palace. You've just had your tantalizing first glimpse into the secret snack economy thriving beneath the Forbidden City's rigid veneer. Now let's pull back the silken curtains and peek into the true engine of imperial sustenance, the imperial kitchen's hidden scale. This wasn't just a kitchen. It was a sprawling, industrial-sized operation, a city within a city dedicated solely to feeding the imperial household, and its very vastness created opportunities for those secret snacks. A mainstream historical fact you need to grasp is the sheer magnitude of the Forbidden City's culinary infrastructure. The Imperial Household Department oversaw an astonishing array of kitchens, bakeries, tea houses, and specialized workshops dedicated to every imaginable foodstuff. We're talking hundreds, sometimes even thousands of cooks, butchers, pastry chefs, tea masters, and serving staff. This wasn't your average home kitchen. It was a food factory on an epic scale, operating 24/7. Imagine a modern catering company for an entire metropolis, but with no refrigerators and everything done by hand. Now, for a quirky tidbit. Despite this immense capacity and the vast number of dishes prepared for the emperor's daily meals, sometimes over 100 dishes for a single sitting, very little of it was actually consumed by the emperor himself. Most of the food was symbolic, a display of wealth and power, and much of it would eventually be distributed to favored courtiers and eunuchs. It's like preparing a Michelin star banquet every single day, only for the guest of honor to take a few polite bites. Historians still argue whether the astronomical number of dishes served was purely a display of imperial grandeur, or if it also served a practical purpose in allowing the emperor variety and ensuring that no single dish could easily be poisoned without detection. Perhaps it was a shrewd combination of both, a delicious form of security theater. You stand mentally, of course, near the sprawling kitchens. The air hums with activity even at odd hours. The rhythmic chopping of vegetables, the clatter of massive woks, the scent of roasting meats. It's a sensory overload. But amidst this structured chaos, there were inevitable inefficiencies, leftovers, and opportunities. Think about the sheer volume of ingredients flowing in and out. Not everything could be perfectly accounted for, nor could every morsel be precisely controlled once it left the emperor's direct sight. This vast logistical network designed for imperial grandeur inadvertently became a fertile ground for the discreet diversion of foodstuffs. The palace's internal bureaucracy was immense, with countless layers of eunuchs and officials overseeing every detail. This complexity ironically also created cracks through which small, unauthorized transactions and distributions could occur. A cook might accidentally make an extra portion of a particularly delicious pastry, or a eunuch might overorder a batch of seasonal fruit. These seemingly minor discrepancies, multiplied across hundreds of staff and thousands of dishes, added up to a surprising amount of edible opportunity. The hidden scale of the kitchens also meant a constant stream of high-quality ingredients. While the emperor might only taste a few bites, the remainder of these exquisite ingredients, rare spices, premium cuts of meat, freshly picked fruits, represented a wealth of culinary potential for those lower down the food chain. This steady flow of fresh, diverse produce, coupled with the inherent human desire for a varied diet, laid the groundwork for the clandestine snack economy you're about to delve deeper into. The imperial kitchens, in their very excess, became the unexpected wellspring of the Forbidden City's secret delights. You've just peered into the colossal, almost overwhelming scale of the imperial kitchens, a place of immense activity, and as you now realize, unexpected opportunities for discreet culinary diversions. But at the very pinnacle of this culinary pyramid sat the emperor, and his relationship with food was less about personal enjoyment and more about power ritual and surveillance. This brings us to the emperor's daily dining rituals, a spectacle of control that paradoxically fueled the need for secret snacks among his courtiers. A mainstream historical fact is that the emperor's meals were not private affairs, but highly formalized ceremonies meticulously planned and executed by a vast retinue of eunuchs and officials. Every dish was presented with pomp and circumstance, tasted by eunuchs for poison, and served according to strict protocols. You imagine the emperor seated alone at a massive table, surrounded by dozens of dishes, each a miniature work of art. This wasn't a cozy family dinner, it was a performance of absolute power, a daily reminder of his exalted status. He probably thought ordering takeout was a sign of weakness. Now for a quirky tidbit. Despite the hundreds of dishes presented to him daily, the emperor was forbidden from finishing any single dish. He would take a few bites from a selection of dishes, and then the eunuchs would whisk them away. This was partly for security to prevent poisoning by identifying which dish he favored, but also to prevent him from appearing greedy or predictable. Imagine being the most powerful person in the world, surrounded by an endless buffet, yet never being allowed to truly enjoy a full meal of your favorite dish. It's a culinary purgatory, isn't it? Historians still argue whether the emperor's limited consumption was purely a security measure, or if it also served to reinforce his divine detachment from earthly desires, making him seem above mere mortal appetites. Perhaps it was a blend of both a practical security measure imbued with symbolic meaning. You observe the emperor's meal. The silence is palpable, broken only by the rustle of silk robes and the soft clinking of porcelain. The sheer volume of food is staggering, a visual feast designed to impress, not necessarily to satisfy. You realize that while the emperor was surrounded by abundance, his actual personal consumption was highly restricted. This created an interesting dynamic. The cooks were constantly creating culinary masterpieces, but the ultimate consumer was barely touching them. This imperial dining ritual had a direct impact on the courtiers. Firstly, the vast quantity of uneaten high-quality food was then distributed to favored eunuchs and courtiers. This became a significant source of their daily sustenance, but it was their leftovers, not their choice. Secondly, the formality and strictures of the emperor's meals meant that courtiers themselves often ate in a similarly regulated, if less extravagant, manner. There was little room for personal preference, spontaneous hunger, or the simple joy of a familiar comfort food. Therefore, the very rigidity of the emperor's dining rituals, designed to project power and ensure security, inadvertently created a void in the culinary lives of his courtiers. They might be well fed, but they weren't necessarily satisfied. This yearning for personal choice, for a taste of something not dictated by imperial protocol, became the driving force behind the clandestine world of secret snacks. The emperor's majestic table, in its very excess and formality, ironically paved the way for the humble hidden delights enjoyed in the shadows of the Forbidden City. You've just seen the emperor's opulent yet restrictive dining rituals, a spectacle of power that left his courtiers well-fed but culinarily unsatisfied. This profound gap between official sustenance and personal desire explains exactly why courtiers needed secret snacks beyond official meals. In the Forbidden City, hunger wasn't just physical. It was a craving for autonomy, comfort, and a taste of the outside world. A Pisceid, mainstream historical fact, is that courtiers, though often living in luxury compared to commoners, were bound by incredibly strict rules regarding their daily lives, including their meals. They ate according to schedules and menus dictated by the imperial household department, and rarely had the freedom to eat what they wanted when they wanted it. You imagine a high-ranking official, perhaps a grand secretary, dutifully consuming his prescribed meal of bland rice porridge and a few standardized dishes, all the while dreaming of a spicy street noodle or a sweet dumpling from his hometown. This wasn't about starvation, it was about the psychological deprivation of choice. He probably thought his true job was to look busy while secretly planning his next forbidden bite. Now for a beady, quirky tidbit. The Forbidden City, despite its vastness, could be a surprisingly lonely and isolating place. Many courtiers spent years, even decades, separated from their families and hometowns. Food, especially familiar comfort food, often served as a powerful link to memory identity and the world beyond the palace walls. A secret snack wasn't just about satisfying hunger, it was a small act of rebellion, a private moment of connection to a past life or a distant loved one. Imagine a seasoned courtier after a long day of tedious imperial audiences carefully unwrapping a small sweet pastry smuggled from outside each bite, a whisper of home. Historians still argue whether the psychological need for comfort food was explicitly recognized by courtiers, or if it was an unconscious yearning that manifested in clandestine snacking. Perhaps it was a deeply human response to an incredibly artificial and restrictive environment. You realize that courtiers faced several practical challenges that made secret snacks essential. Official meals might not align with their personal hunger cycles, leaving them hungry between formal sittings. The food, while plentiful, could be monotonous or simply not to their individual taste. Imagine eating the same dozen imperial dishes, no matter how exquisite, day after day, year after year. Even the most refined palate would crave variety. Furthermore, food was a matter of extreme status. The emperor's food was unique, untouchable. Even the highest-ranking courtiers often ate imperial leftovers distributed according to rank and favor. This meant they rarely experienced the direct, unmediated pleasure of choosing and consuming food for their own simple enjoyment. A secret snack offered a moment of genuine personal pleasure, free from the scrutinizing gaze of protocol and hierarchy. The pressure to maintain appearances and adhere to strict court etiquette was immense. Even a simple stomach rumble during a solemn audience could be a major embarrassment. Having discreet access to a quick bite could prevent such awkward situations. So these secret snacks were not just about illicit pleasure. They were a lifeline of comfort, a small assertion of individuality, and a practical solution to the culinary confines of the Forbidden City. They were tiny acts of culinary self-determination in a world designed for absolute control. You've just grasped the pervasive need for secret snacks among courtiers, born from the rigid dining rituals and the human craving for choice. But who facilitated this clandestine culinary world, who were the silent orchestrators of these forbidden delights? That brings us to the fascinating role of the eunuchs, gatekeepers of goodies. These powerful, often feared figures held the keys to much of the palace's inner workings, including its hidden food economy. A mainstream historical fact is that eunuchs played an incredibly pervasive and powerful role in the Forbidden City, serving as administrators, confidants, spies, and custodians of the imperial household. They managed everything from the emperor's personal finances to the palace kitchens. You imagine a high-ranking eunuch, his silken robes rustling softly, his eyes missing nothing as he moves through the palace corridors. They were the essential intermediaries, and their control over goods and access made them indispensable to anyone seeking a secret snack. He probably knew exactly who was craving what, and for the right price, where to get it. Now for a quirky tidbit. Eunuchs, despite their often humble origins, could amass immense personal wealth and influence within the Forbidden City. This wealth wasn't just from official salaries, but often from informal commissions or bribes for favors rendered, including the procurement and discreet distribution of desired goods. A portion of this illicit trade undoubtedly involved special foodstuffs. Imagine a eunuch discreetly accepting a small jade pendant in exchange for a basket of freshly picked out-of-season lychees smuggled in from outside the palace walls. Historians still argue whether the eunuch's involvement in the secret snack trade was primarily a form of personal enrichment, or if it was also a way for them to build informal networks of favor and obligation among courtiers, solidifying their power. Perhaps it was a shrewd blend of both, a delicious form of political maneuvering. You realize that the eunuchs controlled access to the imperial kitchens, the storerooms, and the external markets. They were the logistical masterminds behind every morsel consumed in the palace. This gave them an unparalleled position to either thwart or facilitate the secret snack trade. A watchful eunuch could confiscate any illicit food, leading to punishment for the courtier involved. But a complicit eunuch, for the right incentive, could make a desired treat appear as if by magic. Their unique position meant they often acted as both suppliers and enablers. They might acquire specific regional delicacies through their external connections or divert excess portions of imperial meals that weren't deemed fit for the emperor's secondary distribution, but were still perfectly edible and desirable. They knew the courtiers' preferences, their cravings, and their willingness to pay for a taste of something forbidden or familiar. You hear a hushed conversation in a secluded courtyard, a eunuch subtly negotiating the delivery of some rare candied fruit. The relationships between courtiers and eunuchs were complex, often a dance of power dependence and unspoken favors. For a courtier craving a specific snack, a well-placed eunuch could be an invaluable ally, a silent partner in their culinary indulgences. For the eunuch, these transactions provided not just wealth, but also a network of grateful, indebted individuals within the court, subtly strengthening their informal authority. The eunuchs, in their hidden power and intricate web of connections, were truly the indispensable gatekeepers of the Forbidden City's secret gourmand delights. You've just uncovered the pivotal role of eunuchs as the powerful and often complicit facilitators of forbidden treats within the Forbidden City. But the world of secret snacks wasn't exclusively controlled by them. Another crucial, often overlooked group played a vital role in this clandestine culinary network, the Paquar, Palace Maids' Private Provisions. These women, seemingly subservient, developed ingenious ways to acquire and share their own hidden delights. A mainstream historical fact is that palace maids performed a vast array of essential domestic duties within the Forbidden City, from cleaning and sewing to tending to the imperial consorts and children. They lived in close quarters, often working long hours with little time for personal leisure. You imagine a young palace maid exhausted after a day of arduous chores, her stomach rumbling between formal meals, longing for something comforting and familiar from her village. Their status might have been low, but their human needs were no different from anyone else's. She probably thought that a well-hidden candied fruit was a small rebellion against the endless scrubbing. Now for a frumsteed, quirky tidbit. Palace maids, despite their limited personal freedom and direct access to external markets, often formed strong bonds of camaraderie and mutual support. This informal network was crucial for the exchange of information gossip and crucially hidden foodstuffs. A maid whose family lived close to the capital might receive small parcels from home during infrequent visits or even through a sympathetic guard. These parcels would often contain local delicacies or preserved snacks, which she would then discreetly share with her trusted friends within the palace. Imagine a hushed exchange of a small embroidered pouch containing savory melon seeds during a quiet moment in the laundries, a tiny act of friendship and comfort. Historians still argue whether the sharing of these private provisions among maids was primarily a means of fostering community or if it was also a survival strategy, ensuring everyone had access to diverse nutrients and comfort foods. Perhaps it was a beautiful blend of both, a shared secret that strengthened their bonds. You realize that unlike the eunuchs, who often had financial means or direct control over imperial supplies, maids relied more on ingenuity, personal connections, and the sheer volume of mundane palace activities to facilitate their snacking. A maid attending to a consort might discreetly borrow a few expensive nuts intended for her mistress's tea, or a cleverly repurposed small edible scraps from a formal meal that would otherwise be discarded. They were masters of subtle diversion. Their hidden stashes were often very simple: dried fruits, roasted nuts, preserved vegetables, or small hard candies that wouldn't spoil easily and could be concealed in a sleeve or a hidden pocket. These weren't grand delicacies, but familiar tastes that offered a small moment of personal pleasure in a life largely devoid of individual choice. You picture a tiny, carefully wrapped parcel tucked away in a corner of a maid's sleeping quarters, a private treasure. The sharing of these private provisions wasn't just about food, it was about trust and solidarity. In a world of strict hierarchy and constant surveillance, the act of sharing a secret snack was a quiet affirmation of humanity and connection, a fleeting escape from the rigid roles imposed upon them. The palace maids, in their quiet resilience and clever resourcefulness, carved out their own space in the Forbidden City's secret culinary landscape, one hidden bite at a time. You've just uncovered the clever clandestine world of palace maids and their shared provisions, a testament to human connection even amidst strict protocol. Now let's consider what kind of deliciousness they were actually craving and acquiring. Seasonal delicacies covertly consumed. The Forbidden City might have had an endless pantry, but nothing beat the thrill of a fresh seasonal treat enjoyed in secret. Above mainstream historical fact is that traditional Chinese cuisine, particularly imperial cooking, placed immense importance on seasonal ingredients. And dishes changed with the months showcasing the freshest produce, meats, and seafood available. You imagine the imperial chefs meticulously planning menus around the arrival of spring bamboo shoots, summer lychees, autumn crabs, or winter chestnuts. However, these highly regulated seasonal items, when intended for the emperor, were subject to extreme protocol, often tasted and retasted, leaving little room for spontaneous enjoyment by courtiers. He probably thought the best way to enjoy a seasonal fruit was to have it formally presented, not just grab it from a basket. Now for a poinkiki, quirky tidbit, the desire for certain out-of-season delicacies or simply a craving for a seasonal treat. Outside, the official meal structure often led to ingenious smuggling. Imagine a courtier having heard whispered rumors of the first ripe peaches appearing in a distant market, subtly arranging for a trusted eunuch or a bribed guard to procure a few, carefully hidden for a private moment, of pure, unadulterated joy. The taste of a perfectly ripe peach, savored in a hushed corner of a courtyard, would be infinitely more satisfying when it was both delicious and illicit. Historians still argue whether the demand for out-of-season items was driven purely by personal desire, or if it also served as a subtle status symbol among courtiers demonstrating their access and influence. Perhaps it was a blend of both a taste of luxury combined with a touch of defiance. You realize that these seasonal cravings weren't just about indulgence. They were deeply rooted in cultural appreciation for fresh, ephemeral flavors. A ripe persimmon in autumn, the first tender greens of spring, the crisp sweetness of water chestnuts. These were simple joys that rigid court life often denied. The courtiers, regardless of their rank, were still deeply connected to these traditional culinary cycles. The very act of consuming a seasonal delicacy out of sight was a small act of self-determination. It was a momentary reclaiming of personal taste in a world where almost everything was dictated by imperial decree. The freshness, the fleeting availability, and the illicit nature of these treats would heighten their appeal. You can almost taste the juicy sweetness of a secret lychee, cool and refreshing on a hot summer's day, each bite a tiny whisper of freedom. The network of eunuchs, palace maids, and external connections would become particularly active during these peak seasons as demand for specific items surged. Bribes might increase and risks would be higher, but the allure of that perfect, fresh, forbidden seasonal bite often proved irresistible. The Forbidden City, for all its strictness, couldn't suppress the human desire for a taste of nature's fleeting bounty. You've just savored the fleeting joy of seasonal delicacies illicitly enjoyed within the Forbidden City. Now let's expand our palate even further and explore how courtiers sought tastes that reminded them not just of a season, but of a place. Regional flavors illicitly imported. In a palace designed to centralize all power, the subtle smuggling of foods from distant provinces became a quiet act of culinary nostalgia and defiance. A punt, mainstream historical fact, is that China, being a vast and geographically diverse empire, boasts an incredible array of distinct regional cuisines. From the spicy flavors of Sichuan to the sweet and delicate dishes of the South, each province had its unique culinary identity. You imagine a courtier from a distant province, perhaps Hunan years removed from his homeland, yearning for the fiery kick of a familiar chili snack that was utterly absent from the refined, often blander imperial cuisine. The emperor's table represented the unified empire, but personal palates still longed for the taste of home. He probably dreamt of his hometown's fermented bean curd, not the imperial bird's nest soup. Now for a quirky tidbit. The craving for specific regional snacks was often so strong that courtiers would go to considerable lengths to have them smuggled into the Forbidden City, relying on intricate networks that stretched across the empire. This could involve bribing merchants who traveled to the capital, or even relying on sympathetic officials returning from provincial postings. Imagine a small, carefully wrapped package, perhaps containing sun-dried preserved plums from Guangdong, or spicy pickled vegetables from Sichuan, hidden within a diplomatic envoy's luggage, each bite a clandestine journey back to childhood. Historians still argue whether the demand for regional snacks was solely driven by personal longing, or if it also served as a subtle way for courtiers to maintain a sense of provincial identity and connection amidst the homogenizing force of the imperial court. Perhaps it was a delicious manifestation of both cultural pride and homesickness. You realize that imperial cuisine, while grand, tended to be standardized and at times somewhat conservative, aiming for broad appeal to an emperor who might hail from any region and whose palate was unpredictable. This often meant a lack of the bold, distinct flavors that characterized many regional dishes. For a courtier accustomed to the piquant tastes of his youth, the Forbidden City's offerings could feel bland and uninspiring. The secrecy around these regional imports wasn't just about bypassing food protocols, it was also about the inherent difficulty of transport and preservation. Many regional specialties were perishable or difficult to conceal. This added to their allure and made their acquisition a mark of significant resourcefulness or deep personal connection to a well-placed smuggler. You can almost taste the sharp, tangy flavor of a secretly acquired preserved fruit, a burst of forbidden flavor that transports you thousands of miles away. This illicit trade in regional snacks highlights the enduring power of food as a cultural anchor. Even within the gilded cage of the Forbidden City, where personal identity was often subsumed by imperial service, the taste of home remained a powerful, almost subversive force. These clandestine culinary connections kept the courtiers tethered to their roots, reminding them that even in the heart of imperial power, the flavors of a distant homeland could still offer a profound, if secret, comfort. You've just sampled the nostalgic comfort of regional flavors illicitly imported into the Forbidden City. Now let's turn our attention to the universal craving that transcends all cultures and eras, especially when it's supposed to be off-limits. Sweet temptations, sugared secrets. For the courtiers of the Forbidden City, the lure of sugary delights was particularly strong, and their clandestine consumption a testament to the irresistible pull of sweetness. A mainstream historical fact is that sugar, though expensive, was known and used in ancient China with honey and maltose, also serving as common sweeteners. Chinese culinary traditions included a wide array of sweet pastries, candies, and sugared fruits, often served at special occasions or enjoyed as treats. You imagine a hidden drawer in a courtier's chamber containing a small, precious hoard of these sugary delights. Imperial banquets certainly included sweets, but they were formal and shared, lacking the personal indulgence of a secret stash. He probably dreamed of sneaking a few extra candied dates after a particularly long imperial audience. Now for a quirky tidbit. Some of the most sought-after sweet snacks were candied fruits often preserved with honey or sugar, or delicately crafted pastries filled with sweet bean paste or nuts. These required skillful preparation and often exotic ingredients, making them valuable and therefore prime candidates for illicit trade. Imagine a courtier carefully unwrapping a piece of glistening candied hawthorn, its tart sweet flavor, a burst of pure personal joy in a world of rigid protocol. Historians still argue whether the demand for these secret sweets was driven purely by the pleasure of taste, or if there was also a subconscious psychological need for comfort and quick energy in the highly stressful and sedentary court environment. Perhaps it was a delightful combination of both a caloric pick-me-up disguised as indulgence. You realize that for many courtiers whose lives were filled with political maneuvering and intellectual pursuits, a quick burst of sugar could provide a much-needed energy boost or a momentary escape from the day's pressures. It was a simple, accessible form of self-medication, a little burst of sunshine in a life often lived in shadow. You can almost feel the satisfying crunch of a sugared nut, followed by the comforting sweetness melting on your tongue. The secrecy surrounding these sweet treats was often a matter of status and control. The finest sweets were reserved for the emperor, and any unauthorized consumption was a breach of protocol. Furthermore, indulging in visible excess, even of sweets, could be seen as a sign of lack of self-control, potentially jeopardizing one's standing. Thus, these sweet temptations were savored in private, away from prying eyes. The eunuchs and palace maids, as you've learned, were key players in this trade. They could discreetly procure special pastries from outside, or even divert small quantities of high-quality ingredients from the imperial kitchens to create homemade sweet treats for favored courtiers. This clandestine supply chain ensured that the Forbidden City, for all its strictures, could not completely suppress the universal human craving for a little something sweet. The allure of these sugared secrets was powerful, offering a forbidden taste of pure, unadulterated pleasure in a world where pleasure was often a calculated political tool. You've just been tempted by the sweet sugared secrets that found their way into the Forbidden City. Now let's balance that sweetness with its equally alluring counterpart: savory bites hidden from view. For courtiers, the craving for pungent, salty, or spicy snacks was just as strong, offering a sharp contrast to the often mild imperial cuisine and providing a taste of the outside world's robust flavors. A mainstream historical fact is that Chinese cuisine is incredibly diverse in its savory flavors, utilizing a wide range of fermented ingredients, spices, and cooking techniques to create complex umami profiles. From fermented bean curd to spicy pickled vegetables and dried seasoned meats, there was a vast world of savory snacks beyond the palace gates. You imagine a courtier, after a long day of elaborate but perhaps subtly flavored imperial dishes, yearning for the bold, straightforward kick of a spicy chili oil or the satisfying chew of a dried, salty meat snack. He probably had a secret compartment for his pickled radishes, because even an emperor's food can be a bit predictable. Now for a quirky tidbit. Some of the most desired savory snacks were often those that possessed strong, distinctive aromas. Think pungent fermented tofu, spicy preserved eggs, or intensely flavored jerky. These were particularly challenging to conceal, as their scent could easily betray their presence. Courtiers would employ clever methods of wrapping and storing to mask the smell, often consuming them in secluded corners or during times when strong odors from imperial kitchens might provide cover. Imagine a courtier carefully unwrapping a piece of pungent dried meat in a quiet alcove, savoring the intense flavor that momentarily transports him from the palace's stifling decorum. Historians still argue whether the popularity of these strong-flavored snacks was purely a matter of taste preference, or if their potent aromas also served as a psychological rebellion against the controlled, refined sensory environment of the Forbidden City. Perhaps it was a delightful and defiant assault on the senses, You realize that imperial cuisine, while grand, often prioritized harmony and subtlety of flavor, meant to please a wide range of palates, including the emperors, who might have preferred less aggressive tastes. This left a void for those who craved the bold, uninhibited flavors common in regional street food or home cooking. A spicy bean paste, a salty fermented pickle, or a crispy savory pancake would offer a profound sensory experience that the official meals rarely delivered. You can almost feel the satisfying crunch of a secretly consumed fried fritter, its savory warmth, a stark contrast to the palace's cool formality. The secretive nature of consuming these savory bites also stemmed from their often humble origins. Many were common street foods or peasant snacks, far removed from the refined culinary standards of the imperial court. To be caught indulging in such lowly fare could be seen as undignified or even a sign of bad taste, potentially impacting one's social standing. The same networks of eunuchs and maids, as you've learned, were instrumental in facilitating the flow of these savory secrets. They knew which vendors outside the palace offered the best pickled turnips or spiced dried tofu, and they managed the delicate logistics of bringing them past watchful eyes. The lure of these pungent, satisfying, and often forbidden savory snacks provided a constant, tantalizing counterpoint to the imperial table, a hidden world of robust flavors within the Forbidden City's silent, gilded walls. You've just savored the pungent secrets of hidden savory bites in the Forbidden City. Now let's consider a beverage that, while universally accepted, often played a quiet yet crucial supporting role in these clandestine culinary escapades: tea's role in secret snacking. For courtiers, a carefully prepared cup of tea wasn't just a drink. It was the perfect accomplice for a forbidden treat, enhancing flavors and facilitating discreet indulgence. A mainstream historical fact is that tea was and remains an integral part of Chinese culture, consumed daily by all social classes, from the humblest peasant to the loftiest emperor. The Forbidden City had numerous specialized tea houses and vast supplies of different tea varieties, from common green teas to rare and expensive oolongs and pu-ers. You imagine the ubiquitous presence of teacups and teapots throughout the palace, making it easy to blend in while enjoying a covert snack. He probably thought the best tea ceremony involved a hidden biscuit. Now for a quirky tidbit. Tea was often believed to aid digestion, particularly after rich meals. For a courtier secretly indulging in a heavy savory snack or an overly sweet pastry, a cup of strong hot tea could serve as a practical cover, helping to wash down the forbidden treat and alleviate any post-indulgence discomfort. It also offered a convenient excuse for retreating to a private chamber or a quiet corner of a garden, the perfect setting for a clandestine munch. Imagine a courtier feigning a sudden need for a calming cup of jasmine tea, only to reveal a small, carefully wrapped dumpling hidden in his sleeve once he's alone. Historians still argue whether the medicinal properties attributed to tea were primarily anecdotal, or if the consistent consumption of boiled water through tea had genuine health benefits that were observed and understood. Perhaps it was a practical habit reinforced by perceived wellness, making it the ideal companion for secret delights. You realize that tea ceremonies and tea drinking were so commonplace and ritualized that they provided excellent cover for other activities. A courtier could quietly sip tea, appearing to be contemplative or simply resting while subtly reaching for a hidden snack. The delicate aromas of different teas could also help to mask the scent of more pungent savory treats, ensuring their clandestine nature. You can almost smell the earthy notes of a warm pu'er mingling subtly with the phantom scent of a forbidden savory bite. Furthermore, tea itself was often paired with specific types of snacks, even in formal settings. This cultural expectation provided a natural context for a courtier to justify having a small something with their tea, even if the something was procured through unofficial channels. A sweet osmanthus cake or a handful of roasted melon seeds were perfectly acceptable tea accompaniments, making their hidden consumption less suspicious. The act of preparing tea could also be a quiet ritual, a moment of personal solace in the rigid palace environment. This private time could easily be extended to include the enjoyment of a treasured secret snack away from prying eyes. Tea, in its ubiquity and its versatility, became the silent accomplice in countless acts of culinary rebellion, enhancing the flavors of forbidden treats and providing the perfect cloak for their discreet consumption within the Forbidden City's silent walls. You've just witnessed how tea became the perfect accomplice for secret snacking, a ubiquitous cover for clandestine indulgence. Now let's uncover a fascinating category of these forbidden bites: medicinal snacks, health, and disguise. For courtiers, certain foods were prized not just for their taste, but for their perceived health benefits, often providing a convenient excuse for their consumption even when acquired through unofficial channels. A mainstream historical fact is that traditional Chinese medicine TCM placed enormous importance on diet therapy, believing that specific foods possessed medicinal properties that could balance the body's QI, strengthen organs, or treat ailments. The Forbidden City had imperial physicians who prescribed elaborate dietary regimens based on TCM principles. You imagine a courtier perhaps feeling sluggish or experiencing minor aches, discreetly seeking out a snack believed to invigorate the spirit or soothe an ailment, often framing its consumption as a health necessity. He probably justified his extra ginseng cookie as preventative medicine. Now for a quirky tidbit. Some commonly desired medicinal snacks were often quite palatable, blurring the line between health food and indulgence. Items like candied ginger, good for digestion and warmth, black sesame paste, believed to promote longevity and hair health, or goji berries for vision and general vitality, were delicious in their own right, but their purported health benefits provided a perfect cover for their secret consumption. Imagine a courtier publicly proclaiming he's eating dried longans for inner harmony while secretly savoring their sweet chewiness for pure enjoyment. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for consuming these medicinal snacks was genuine health concern or if the health benefits were often a convenient rationalization for indulging in desirable foods. Perhaps it was a clever dual purpose, where wellness and wantonness intertwined. You realize that in the highly competitive and stressful environment of the Forbidden City, maintaining one's health was paramount. Sickness could lead to a loss of favor, reduced influence, or even worse outcomes. Therefore, any food that could genuinely or even symbolically contribute to well-being was highly valued. This created a demand for specific ingredients or prepared snacks known for their therapeutic properties. The secrecy surrounding these medicinal snacks often arose when they were obtained outside official channels or consumed in quantities beyond a prescribed dose. While imperial physicians might prescribe certain ingredients, acquiring them through the complex bribed network of eunuchs and smugglers allowed courtiers to supplement their diets as they saw fit without formal permission. You hear hushed whispers about a rare batch of longevity mushrooms subtly changing hands in a secluded garden path. Furthermore, framing an indulgence as a health necessity could deflect suspicion. If a courtier was seen consuming a particular item, claiming it was for a delicate constitution or to fortify qi, could provide a plausible excuse, even if the real reason was simply a craving. This clever disguise allowed for more frequent and bolder acts of secret snacking. The medicinal snack therefore became a powerful tool in the courtier's arsenal, allowing them to satisfy their cravings under the guise of maintaining their health, a perfect blend of indulgence and plausible deniability. You've just learned how courtiers cleverly disguised their indulgences as medicinal necessities. Now let's explore a particularly fascinating and often delicious source of secret snacks that came directly from the heart of imperial power: leftovers, lucky lives. For many in the Forbidden City, the emperor's untouched bounty became a valuable, albeit illicit, culinary treasure. A mainstream historical fact is that the vast majority of dishes prepared for the emperor's meals were never fully consumed by him, serving primarily as a display of imperial grandeur and a safeguard against poisoning. After the emperor had taken a few symbolic bites, these elaborate dishes were immediately whisked away from his presence. You imagine mountains of exquisitely prepared food, steamed fish, roasted duck, delicate pastries being carried away, still largely intact and perfectly edible. It's like watching a five-star restaurant throw out 90% of its untouched dishes every single day. He probably thought his actual job was to sample, not finish, and what happened next was just a bonus for someone else. Now for a quirky tidbit. These imperial leftovers were not simply discarded. They were meticulously sorted and distributed by the eunuchs to various levels of favored courtiers, concubines, and high-ranking palace staff according to a strict hierarchy of privilege. Receiving imperial leftovers was a significant honor, a tangible sign of the emperor's favor and a source of high-quality food. However, this official distribution was itself a formal affair. The truly lucky lives of leftovers often involved further informal diversion. A palace maid might discreetly pocket a few choice morsels from a dish meant for a lower-ranking concubine, or a cook might accidentally drop a delectable piece of imperial pastry into a eunuch's waiting hand before formal distribution. Historians still argue whether the unofficial redistribution of imperial leftovers was merely a byproduct of the system's inefficiency, or if it was a tacitly understood unwritten perk that ensured loyalty and provided informal rewards. Perhaps it was a necessary safety valve in a highly stratified culinary environment. You realize that these leftovers were often the finest, most expensive ingredients prepared by the most skilled chefs in the empire. For a courtier, receiving such food, especially through an informal channel, was a chance to enjoy culinary excellence far beyond their ordinary rations. It was a taste of the emperor's table, unburdened by the rituals of imperial dining. You can almost taste the rich, savory flavor of a piece of imperial roast duck, savored quickly and secretly in a quiet corner. The secrecy wasn't about the food itself being forbidden. It was about the unofficial acquisition and consumption bypassing the strict hierarchy of distribution. A favored eunuch might secretly share a particularly delicious leftover with a courtier who had recently done him a favor, creating a bond of obligation and shared secret. This informal recycling of imperial extravagance created a vibrant underground economy of deliciousness. It meant that even those far removed from the emperor's inner circle could, with a bit of cunning or a well-placed friend, partake in the culinary delights of the Forbidden City. The lucky lives of these leftovers ensured that the emperor's symbolic feasts inadvertently nourished a network of secret snackers, adding an ironic twist to the grandeur of imperial dining. You've just uncovered the surprisingly lucky lives of imperial leftovers, often ending up as secret snacks. But how did these coveted items, whether official surplus or illicit imports, actually make their way into the hungry hands of courtiers without immediate detection? That brings us to the ingenious and often high-stakes world of snack smuggling techniques. In the Forbidden City, discretion was paramount and creativity was key. A mainstream historical fact is that the Forbidden City was an incredibly secure complex with multiple layers of gates guards and surveillance. Every person entering and exiting was scrutinized, and internal movements were closely monitored. You imagine a palace guard, his eyes sharp, his hand resting on his sword hilt, as a seemingly innocuous basket passes by. The challenge of moving anything unauthorized, especially perishable food, was immense. He probably had a sixth sense for anything that smelled suspiciously delicious. Now for a quirky tidbit. Eunuchs and palace maids, being the most frequent and least suspicious movers within the palace, were often the primary smugglers. They employed a variety of clever hiding places, false bottoms in laundry baskets, hollowed-out sections of sedan chairs, concealed pouches sewn into the voluminous sleeves of robes, or even ingeniously designed snack pockets tucked into their clothing. Small, easily concealed items like dried fruits, nuts, or flat pastries were ideal. Imagine a maid casually carrying a basket of clean linens, completely unaware that a few precious illegally acquired candied ginger pieces are nestled at the very bottom. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of these smuggling techniques indicates a systemic corruption within the Forbidden City, or if it was simply an unavoidable outcome of human nature, clashing with extreme prohibitions. Perhaps it was a testament to the irresistible allure of a forbidden treat. You realize that timing was crucial. Smuggling attempts would often occur during shift changes, during moments of high activity that provided cover, or in secluded areas with fewer watchful eyes. A sudden downpour, a bustling festival preparation, or the distraction of a major court event could provide the perfect window of opportunity. The element of surprise and stealth was everything. You hear a sudden flurry of activity in a distant courtyard, a perfect moment for a quick exchange of illicit goods. The nature of the snack itself also dictated the smuggling method. Pungent, savory items, as you recall, required careful wrapping to mask their scent. Fragile pastries needed sturdy yet discreet containers. Liquid snacks like a special herbal tonic or a sweet fruit juice were particularly challenging and might be carried in small stoppered gourds or inconspicuous ceramic bottles. The risks were significant. Discovery could lead to severe punishment, including flogging demotion or even banishment from the palace, which for many meant utter destitution. This high-stakes environment added an extra layer of thrill to the act of secret snacking. Every successful smuggling operation was a small victory, a defiant assertion of personal desire against imperial control. The ingenuity and daring displayed in these snack smuggling techniques transformed mundane food items into tantalizing symbols of freedom and a testament to the unyielding human desire for a taste of the forbidden. You've just been briefed on the ingenious high-stakes world of snack smuggling techniques, turning every hidden pouch into a tiny act of defiance. Now let's explore the deeper implications of this clandestine culinary exchange. Food as forbidden favor. In the Forbidden City, where personal connections and political alliances were paramount, the discreet sharing of a secret snack could be a subtle yet powerful tool for building loyalty, conveying messages, or even sealing betrayals. A mainstream historical fact is that the Forbidden City was a hotbed of political intrigue, with courtiers, eunuchs, and consorts constantly vying for the emperor's favor and influence. Gifts, both formal and informal, played a crucial role in these power dynamics. You imagine a high-ranking official subtly offering a rare imported sweet to a junior colleague, or a eunuch presenting a coveted regional delicacy to a concubine whose influence he sought. This wasn't just about generosity, it was a strategic move, a silent negotiation of loyalty and obligation. He probably thought a well-timed pastry could buy him more goodwill than 1,000 flowery speeches. Now for a quirky tidbit. The smaller, more personal nature of secret snacks made them particularly effective as forbidden favors. Unlike formal gifts, which were often publicly recorded and scrutinized, a discreetly shared piece of candied ginger or a hidden packet of dried melon seeds could create a private, unspoken bond. It was a secret shared, a trust established, implying a willingness to bend rules for mutual benefit. Imagine a courtier subtly pushing a small embroidered pouch across a table during a seemingly casual tea ceremony, the contents a prized smuggled delicacy, sealing a silent alliance. Historians still argue whether these culinary favors were primarily about personal bonding and friendship, or if they were always imbued with a deeper political or social calculation. Perhaps it was a complex dance where affection and ambition intertwined. You realize that offering a forbidden snack was a demonstration of several valuable qualities: access to the smuggled goods, generosity in sharing something illicit and often expensive, and trust in the recipient not to betray the secret. For the recipient, accepting such a favor created an unspoken obligation, a subtle debt that could be called upon later. It was a currency of clandestine goodwill, often more potent than official decrees. You almost feel the weight of such a small yet significant gesture, a delicate balance of risk and reward. Conversely, the refusal of a forbidden favor or the deliberate exposure of someone's secret snack habit could be a devastating act of betrayal. Revealing someone's private indulgence could lead to severe punishment, thereby severing an alliance or undermining a rival. The stakes surrounding these seemingly innocuous treats were surprisingly high. The network of eunuchs, palace maids, and guards, as you've observed, were crucial not just for smuggling, but for facilitating these exchanges of forbidden favors. They often acted as intermediaries, delivering discreet packages or conveying subtle messages through the medium of food. The Forbidden City, with its intricate web of power, found a surprising avenue for influence in the seemingly innocent world of secret snacks, transforming mere morsels into potent symbols of allegiance debt and the ever-present undercurrent of court intrigue. You've just witnessed how a simple secret snack could become a powerful currency of favor and intrigue in the Forbidden City. But with such high stakes and hidden networks comes inevitable peril. Let's delve now into Barium, the perils of palace indulgence. Uncovering the very real risks from official punishment to insidious poisoning associated with these seemingly innocuous secret eating habits. A mocked mainstream historical fact is that the Forbidden City operated under an incredibly strict legal and disciplinary code. Breaches of imperial protocol, unauthorized access to goods, or any perceived act of corruption could lead to severe consequences ranging from public flogging and demotion to imprisonment or even death, particularly for those found to be disloyal. You imagine a courtier caught red-handed with a smuggled piece of dried fruit, his face paling as the grim-faced guards approach. The allure of a forbidden treat was often balanced by the very real threat of swift and brutal retribution. He probably thought that a delicious pastry could lead directly to a very painful lecture, or worse. Now, for a quirky tidbit beyond official punishment for smuggling or unauthorized consumption, there was the constant pervasive fear of poisoning. In a palace rife with political intrigue, where rivals constantly sought to eliminate or incapacitate each other, even a safe secret snack could become a vector for assassination. A seemingly generous forbidden favor, remember that from Section 15, could in the wrong hands be laced with a slow-acting poison, leaving little trace. Imagine a courtier, after savoring a particularly delicious, secretly acquired sweet, suddenly feeling a chill run down his spine, wondering if this delightful indulgence was in fact his undoing. Historians still argue whether the fear of poisoning was a constant everyday reality for most courtiers, or if it was amplified by court rumors and dramatic incidents creating a pervasive paranoia. Perhaps it was a genuine threat exaggerated by the psychological pressure of constant competition. You realize that every secret bite was a calculated risk. The source of the snack, the person who offered it, and the timing of its consumption all factored into a silent, unspoken assessment of danger. Trust was a precious commodity easily shattered. Even a seemingly loyal eunuch, if bribed by a rival, could turn a comforting treat into a deadly trap. You see a courtier discreetly passing a piece of food to a loyal servant to taste first, a silent, chilling ritual before indulging. The punishment for food-related offenses often aimed to humiliate and set an example. Being caught with unauthorized food wasn't just about the contraband. It was about undermining the emperor's absolute control over every aspect of palace life. It challenged the meticulously ordered hierarchy and implied a lack of discipline. The very success of a smuggling operation, while thrilling, also increased the risk profile for those involved. The more successful and sought after a particular secret snack became the more attention it might attract from imperial spies or jealous rivals. This created a perverse incentive where success could breed danger. The perils of palace indulgence were a constant shadow over the hidden delights, a grim reminder that in the Forbidden City, even the simplest pleasure could carry the highest cost. You've just considered the perilous stakes of secret snacking, where every delicious bite could be a step towards punishment or poison. This constant threat meant that the emperor's reach extended far beyond formal decrees, subtly but powerfully maintained through a vast network of observation. Let's now explore the unseen eyes and ears of the palace. Emperor's spies, culinary oversight. In the Forbidden City, even your plate was under surveillance. Osadis. Mainstream historical fact is that Chinese emperors, particularly during the Ming and Qing dynasties, employed sophisticated intelligence networks to monitor their officials' courtiers and even members of the imperial family. These spies, often high-ranking eunuchs or members of specialized agencies, permeated every corner of the palace. You imagine a seemingly unassuming attendant, perhaps quietly serving tea, whose real job is to observe who talks to whom, what is exchanged, and what unusual habits might be developing, especially around food. He probably had a mental ledger of every forbidden snack he'd ever seen, just waiting for the right moment to report it. Now for a quirky tidbit. The culinary habits of courtiers were considered a surprisingly telling indicator of their loyalty, discipline, and even potential corruption. An excessive craving for luxurious or rare foods, or a secretive eating habit, could be interpreted as a sign of weakness, extravagance, or even a hidden source of illicit wealth. Therefore, imperial spies would specifically look for deviations from prescribed diets or any evidence of secret snacking as potential red flags. Imagine a spy subtly noting down that a certain courtier always seems to have access to fresh lychees months before they are officially in season, a detail that could lead to a quiet investigation. Historians still argue whether the detailed monitoring of food consumption was primarily a security measure to prevent poisoning and corruption, or if it was also a psychological tool to reinforce imperial control and suppress individuality. Perhaps it was a multifaceted surveillance strategy using food as a window into a courtier's true character and loyalties. You realize that this culinary oversight wasn't always direct. It could be subtle observation, a servant noticing unusual food odors emanating from a private chamber, or a eunuch reporting an unexpected delivery to a courtier's quarters. Gossip, that ever-present currency of the palace, also played a crucial role, with whispers about secret treats quickly reaching the ears of those in power. You hear a hushed conversation between two palace maids, their words seemingly innocent, but one mentions a certain courtier's unusual fondness for a specific regional delicacy. The methods of surveillance extended beyond just observing consumption. The Imperial Household Department, with its vast control over supplies, could also track the flow of ingredients. Any unusual requests, diversions of food from kitchens, or large-scale purchases of specific items outside official channels would immediately raise suspicions. For courtiers, this meant that even the simple pleasure of a secret snack came with a psychological burden of constant vigilance. Every bite was tinged with the risk of exposure, every shared treat a potential vulnerability. This pervasive surveillance aimed to maintain an atmosphere of control, discouraging any behavior that hinted at independence or a deviation from the emperor's absolute authority. The emperor's spies ensured that even in their most private moments, the courtiers' culinary indulgences were rarely truly secret. You've just felt the chilling omnipresence of the emperor's culinary spies, where every bite could be monitored for loyalty. This constant surveillance was part of a broader, more volatile dynamic within the Forbidden City palace factions' snack wars. For courtiers, their dietary choices, even secret ones, could subtly reveal allegiances, signal dissent, or even be weaponized in the relentless struggle for power and influence. A mot de mainstream historical fact is that the Forbidden City was a complex ecosystem of competing factions, rival consorts, ambitious eunuchs, and powerful official families, all vying for proximity to the emperor and control over the vast imperial bureaucracy. These rivalries were often subtle, playing out in court intrigues, whispers, and symbolic gestures. You imagine two powerful ministers outwardly cordial, but one subtly notes that the other has been seen enjoying a specific regional suite associated with a rival provincial faction. In this world, even food could be a political statement. He probably thought that offering his enemy a poisoned dumpling was too obvious. A strategically chosen, politically incorrect snack was far more effective. Now for a quirky tidbit. Certain foods or culinary styles could become implicitly associated with particular factions or regional power bases. For instance, a courtier from a southern province might conspicuously favor spicy Sichuan snacks, subtly aligning himself with a southern faction or expressing disdain for the more delicate northern palace cuisine. Conversely, a rejection of certain common foods might signal an assertion of elite status. These dietary preferences, whether overt or secret, could become a subtle language of belonging or opposition. Imagine a group of eunuchs loyal to one consort, deliberately acquiring and sharing a rare, expensive fruit associated with her home province, a silent act of culinary solidarity. Historians still argue whether these culinary alliances and rivalries were genuinely influential in palace politics, or if they were largely symbolic expressions of pre-existing tensions. Perhaps they were a subtle but potent form of cultural warfare fought with flavors. You realize that sharing a secret snack, remember forbidden favor from Section 15, was a powerful way to solidify an alliance. The shared risk, the mutual trust, and the pleasure of the illicit treat created a strong bond. It was a secret society formed around shared cravings, often transcending formal loyalties. Conversely, denying someone a coveted snack or subtly leaking information about a rival's indulgence could be a devastating blow. The emperor's culinary oversight, as you learned Section 17, was fully aware of these sub-culinary currents. A spy might not just report that a courtier ate a secret snack, but what they ate, who they ate it with, and where it came from, all providing clues to their political leanings and secret associations. The seemingly innocent act of snacking became a data point in the complex calculus of court power. In this high-stakes environment where every gesture held meaning, the subtle world of secret snacks became an additional battlefield. The craving for a familiar taste, the desire for a small pleasure, could be exploited, twisted, and weaponized. The palace factions, in their relentless struggle for supremacy, found that even the most delicious of treats could be transformed into silent ammunition in their ongoing snack wars. You've just witnessed how palace factions used even snacks as silent ammunition in their power struggles. Now let's explore a deeper layer of meaning attached to food, one that went beyond taste or politics. Snack-related superstitions and beliefs. For the courtiers of the Forbidden City, certain foods carried symbolic weight, believed to bring luck, ward off evil, or influence one's destiny, making their secret consumption even more significant. A mainstream historical fact is that Chinese culture is rich with symbolism and superstition, with many foods believed to possess auspicious properties or to ward off misfortune. These beliefs permeated all levels of society, from the humblest villager to the highest courtier. You imagine a courtier anxious about an upcoming imperial audience, discreetly seeking out a specific type of sweet believed to bring good fortune, hoping it will influence the emperor's mood. He probably thought his lucky ginger slice was more potent than any carefully crafted speech. Now for a quirky tidbit. Some foods were consumed during specific times or for particular purposes, not just for taste. For example, during certain festivals, specific dumplings, jiaozi, were eaten for wealth. Their shape resembled ancient gold ingots. Long noodles were eaten for longevity. But beyond these overt customs, there were often more personal, unwritten superstitions tied to secret snacks. A courtier might believe that consuming a particular type of preserved fruit smuggled from a specific region would bring them favor or protect them from gossip. Imagine a palace maid secretly eating a handful of red dates before a difficult task, believing they would provide her with energy and ward off bad luck. Historians still argue whether the adherence to these food-related superstitions was a genuine belief in their magical efficacy, or if it was also a psychological coping mechanism in a highly unpredictable and dangerous environment. Perhaps it was a comforting blend of both, providing a sense of control where little existed. You realize that for many courtiers living in a constant state of uncertainty and fear of imperial displeasure, these food-related superstitions offered a small personal sense of agency. The act of secretly consuming a lucky snack was a way to exert some control over an uncontrollable fate, a quiet plea to the cosmos for protection or good fortune. You can almost feel the nervous energy of a courtier, hoping their hidden bite of longevity noodles will somehow extend their influence, not just their life. Conversely, certain foods might be avoided due to negative superstitions. A food associated with illness or bad luck in one's home region might be carefully eschewed, even if it was readily available in the palace. This added another layer of complexity to their already intricate dietary choices. The eunuchs and palace maids, deeply ingrained in court culture, would be intimately familiar with these beliefs and might even capitalize on them. They could facilitate the acquisition of lucky foods or discreetly warn against unlucky ones, further entrenching their role as intermediaries. The world of secret snacks, therefore, wasn't just about satisfying hunger or taste. It was about navigating a complex tapestry of deeply held beliefs, where every morsel could be a tiny charm against the whims of fate. The courtiers' hidden snack-related superstitions added a rich, mystical dimension to their clandestine culinary lives in the Forbidden City. You've just peeled back the layers of superstition woven into the secret snack habits of the Forbidden City's courtiers. Now let's turn our gaze to the palace's youngest residents, who, despite their privileged status, also found joy and often rebellion in hidden treats. Children of the palace and their treats. For imperial children growing up in a world of immense formality, special snacks offered moments of pure, unadulterated childhood delight, often against strict protocol. A pot, mainstream historical fact is that imperial children, from princes and princesses to the offspring of high-ranking consorts, lived highly regulated lives within the Forbidden City. Their education, daily routines, and even playtimes were meticulously planned. Their meals, while of the highest quality, were also strictly controlled, often chosen for nutritional balance rather than childish whims. You imagine a young prince, bored with his steamed fish and vegetables, eyeing a distant plate of glistening candied fruit just out of his reach. He probably thought being a future emperor meant he should get all the sweets all the time. Now for a quirky tidbit. Despite the strictness, palace children, like all children, craved sweets and familiar comforts. Eunuchs and favored wet nurses or maids, often out of genuine affection or to curry favor with the children's powerful mothers, would discreetly procure and provide special treats. These might be small sweet pastries, candied fruits, or even savory fried dough sticks hidden in sleeves or tucked into toys. Imagine a young princess giggling softly as a beloved maid slips her a piece of illicit rock sugar during a tedious lesson, a tiny rebellion against the endless formality. Historians still argue whether the occasional indulgence of imperial children by palace staff was primarily an act of genuine affection, or if it was a subtle form of influence building, knowing that a grateful child could one day become a powerful adult. Perhaps it was a sweet blend of both, a human connection in a very unhuman environment. You realize that for children, these secret treats were more than just food. They were symbols of love, playfulness, and a fleeting escape from the rigid world of imperial expectations. A hidden piece of hawthorn candy might represent a moment of freedom from endless calligraphy practice, or a tiny mooncake might be a secret shared with a trusted playmate. You can almost feel the sticky delight of a young hand unwrapping a secret sweet, the pure joy radiating from the forbidden indulgence. The secrecy around these treats was essential. Excessive indulgence could be seen as spoiling the child or encouraging bad habits, potentially incurring the wrath of the emperor or the child's stern tutors. Therefore, the sharing of these treats was often done in hushed tones in secluded corners of courtyards or under the watchful but complicit eyes of trusted guardians. The same networks of eunuchs and maids as you've learned throughout this journey played a vital role in this children's culinary underground. They knew which sweets were most desired and how to procure them without drawing undue attention. For the children of the palace, these forbidden delights offered a rare taste of normal childhood, a small rebellion that helped them navigate the extraordinary pressures of their imperial upbringing. The hidden treats of the imperial children were a testament to the universal language of comfort food and the enduring human desire for a little bit of sweet secret fun. You've just peeked into the hidden world of imperial children and their secret treats. Now let's shift our focus to grander occasions times of supposed imperial generosity that paradoxically offered new opportunities for clandestine indulgence. Festivals and forbidden feasts. The Forbidden City's elaborate official celebrations designed to showcase imperial might also became prime moments for courtiers to enjoy unofficial, often illicit, culinary delights. But the mainstream historical fact is that the Chinese imperial calendar was punctuated by numerous grand festivals: New Year, the Lantern Festival, the Dragon Boat Festival, the Mid-Autumn Festival, among others. These occasions were marked by elaborate imperial banquets, specific festive foods, and a heightened atmosphere of celebration. You imagine the vibrant colors of lanterns, the sounds of music and performance, and the pervasive scent of special festive dishes wafting through the palace grounds. He probably thought that the best part of a festival was the chance to sneak an extra mooncake. Now for a pasquichor. Quirky tidbit. While the imperial kitchens would prepare vast quantities of specific festival foods, glutinous rice dumplings, zongzi for dragon boat mooncakes for mid-autumn, these were still subject to the emperor's strict tasting rituals and hierarchical distribution. However, the sheer volume of production, the increased activity within the palace, and the general celebratory atmosphere created more chaos and therefore more opportunities for unauthorized acquisition. A particularly cunning eunuch might misplace a tray of newly made festive pastries, or a cook might accidentally make double the usual amount of a coveted festival snack, knowing it would be scooped up by eager, discreet hands. Historians still argue whether the increased freedom during festivals for unofficial eating was a deliberate, albeit unspoken, imperial concession to let off steam, or if it was simply an unavoidable side effect of large-scale joyous events. Perhaps it was a calculated risk the emperor's household tolerated for morale. You realize that these festivals presented a perfect storm of conditions for secret snacking. The general bustle and reduced vigilance from guards distracted by the festivities made smuggling easier. The widespread production and consumption of specific festive foods provided camouflage for illicit items. A mooncake brought in from a beloved family bakery outside the palace would blend in perfectly with the thousands of official mooncakes, but its personal significance and illicit origin would make it infinitely more satisfying. You can almost taste the rich, dense sweetness of a secretly acquired mooncake savored under the glow of a private lantern. Furthermore, some regional festival foods were so deeply tied to identity and tradition that courtiers from distant provinces would feel an almost desperate longing for them during these times. This heightened demand would fuel the networks of eunuchs and smugglers remember regional flavors from Section 8, making the festivals periods of peak activity for the forbidden food trade. The communal spirit of festivals, even within the formal confines of the Forbidden City, fostered a sense of shared humanity and implicitly shared indulgence. A courtier might feel less guilt about indulging in a forbidden treat when everyone around them was celebrating, creating a collective, if hushed, atmosphere of culinary transgression. The festivals designed to glorify the emperor inadvertently became prime opportunities for courtiers to indulge their personal cravings, turning grand imperial occasions into discreet forbidden feasts. You've just witnessed how official festivals opened discreet avenues for forbidden feasting within the Forbidden City. Now let's explore how the desire for novelty and improved tastes led to a quiet revolution in flavors, culinary innovations covertly shared. Even within the traditional confines of the palace, new recipes and food preparations emerged, often spreading through clandestine channels far from the official imperial kitchens. A mainstream historical fact is that Chinese culinary traditions are ancient and incredibly sophisticated, constantly evolving with new ingredients, techniques, and regional influences. Imperial kitchens, while grand, were often conservative, adhering to established recipes and protocols deemed worthy of the emperor. You imagine a seasoned palace cook, perhaps a eunuch, with a spark of innovation in his eye, experimenting with a new combination of spices, or a novel cooking method initially just for himself or a trusted few. He probably thought the emperor's palate needed a little subtle modernization, but secretly. Now for a quirky tidbit. Some of these culinary innovations were born out of a desire for new, exciting secret snacks, rather than official imperial dishes. A eunuch might combine ingredients from imperial leftovers, remember Section 13, in an unconventional way, or a maid might adapt a family recipe from outside the palace using readily available court ingredients, creating a new, delicious, and entirely unofficial treat. Imagine a whispered conversation between two palace maids, one eagerly describing a new way to prepare dried persimmons with ginger and a touch of roasted sesame, a recipe that quickly spreads through their network. Historians still argue whether the Forbidden City's closed environment actually stifled culinary innovation or if it merely pushed it underground, creating a vibrant, if secret, subculture of experimentation. Perhaps it fostered a kind of culinary black market, where ingenuity thrived in the shadows. You realize that the limited variety of official dishes, especially for courtiers, fueled a hunger for novel flavors and preparations. If official meals felt monotonous, a newly invented snack, even if simple, could provide immense excitement. This encouraged a quiet spirit of experimentation among those who handled food, far from the watchful eyes of imperial food tasters. The sharing of these culinary innovations was by necessity covert. A new recipe wouldn't be formally introduced to the imperial household department. It would spread through word-of-mouth whispered instructions or small discreet samples passed between trusted individuals. The thrill of trying a new snack, especially one developed within the palace's hidden culinary network, added to its allure. You can almost taste the novel combination of flavors in a secretly shared, freshly invented dumpling, a fleeting moment of culinary discovery. These covertly shared innovations often represented a blend of traditional ingredients with new techniques or unexpected combinations, reflecting both the ingenuity of the palace staff and the diverse origins of the courtiers themselves. They were micro-revolutions in taste, tiny sparks of creativity in a rigidly controlled environment. The Forbidden City, for all its strict adherence to tradition, could not entirely suppress the human urge to create, to innovate, and to delight the palate with something truly new, even if it had to be done in the shadows. You've just discovered how culinary innovations, quietly shared, added zest to the Forbidden City's secret snack scene. Now let's consider how these hidden delights weren't entirely insulated from the outside world. In fact, many secret snacks acted as vital connections. Snacks beyond the inner court. They forged unexpected links between the rigidly controlled imperial palace and the bustling, vibrant world beyond its crimson walls. Mainstream historical fact is that despite its formidable defenses and strict protocols, the Forbidden City was not a completely sealed bubble. Goods messages and people, albeit carefully vetted ones, constantly moved in and out. Courtiers, eunuchs, and palace maids often had family or business connections in the capital city or even further afield. You imagine a bustling street market just outside the Forbidden City's outer walls, brimming with vendors selling regional delicacies and common street foods. He probably thought the biggest challenge wasn't sneaking food in, but knowing what was truly delicious out there. Now for a quirky tidbit. Many of the most desired secret snacks were precisely those that came from outside the inner court's official supply chain. These were items readily available in the common markets, a specific type of street noodle, a popular local pastry, a unique pickled vegetable from a specific vendor. The appeal wasn't just their taste, it was their connection to ordinary life, to the rhythms and flavors of the world beyond the palace walls. Imagine a courtier receiving a small discreet package containing a perfectly crispy fried dough stick, still warm from a street vendor's stall, each bite a fleeting taste of normalcy and freedom. Historians still argue whether the longing for outside snacks was purely about taste variety or if it also served as a psychological link to a sense of belonging to a broader society beyond the confining palace walls. Perhaps it was a delicious form of existential connection. You realize that the procurement of these outside snacks relied heavily on the network of eunuchs and guards who had regular access to the external world. Bribes. Remember Section 5. Eunuchs, gatekeepers of goodies, would be paid to ensure these items made it past the palace gates hidden amongst legitimate deliveries or on their persons. The risks were high, but the reward, a taste of freedom and authenticity, was often deemed worth it. You hear the distant hubbub of the city outside a tantalizing promise of flavors that were for a moment within reach. These snacks served as subtle reminders of the lives courtiers and palace staff had left behind or the world they longed to re-enter. A specific type of candied fruit might remind a maid of her childhood village, or a savory pancake might connect a eunuch to his distant family. Food became a tangible link to memory and identity, bridging the vast chasm between the Forbidden City and the outside world. The illicit flow of these snacks also meant that news and trends from outside could subtly seep into the palace. A new popular street food, if delicious enough, could find its way to a courtier's secret stash, and whispers of its deliciousness could spread, albeit discreetly, among the inner circles. The Forbidden City, for all its isolation, was never truly cut off from the vibrant culinary life of China, and its secret snacks were the delicious clandestine conduits. You've just explored how snacks from beyond the inner court served as vital, albeit illicit, connections to the outside world. Now let's talk about the economic engine behind this entire clandestine culinary operation. The cost of covert cravings. For every secretly consumed delicacy, there was a price paid not just in coin, but in favors, risks, and sometimes even dignity. A mainstream historical fact is that while courtiers and eunuchs held varying degrees of wealth and access, their personal funds were often limited compared to the imperial treasury, and unauthorized spending was always a risk. Furthermore, acquiring goods within the Forbidden City's highly controlled environment often came with informal surcharges or bribes. You imagine a courtier discreetly handing a small heavy silk purse to a eunuch, knowing that its contents are payment not just for the snack, but for the risk and secrecy involved. He probably considered every illicit bite a tiny, delicious investment. Now for a quirky tidbit. The price of a secret snack was rarely fixed. It was often a fluid negotiation influenced by the rarity of the item, the urgency of the craving, the degree of risk involved in its acquisition, and the current political climate. A highly sought-after seasonal delicacy or a regional specialty that was particularly difficult to smuggle could command exorbitant prices or significant favors. Imagine a eunuch bartering for a fresh batch of exceptionally rare candied kumquats, subtly hinting at the dangers involved and thus driving up the cost for an eager courtier. Historians still argue whether the inflated prices for secret snacks were primarily a reflection of genuine market forces, supply and demand within a clandestine system, or if they were largely a mechanism for powerful eunuchs to exploit the desires of courtiers for personal enrichment. Perhaps it was a shrewd blend of both a form of internal palace profiteering. You realize that these covert cravings weren't just a matter of personal indulgence. They were a significant drain on a courtier's often limited personal resources. Every secret bite represented a choice, perhaps foregoing new robes or deferring a small luxury for a loved one outside the palace. This financial burden underscored the depth of their desire for these forbidden treats. You almost feel the weight of the tiny purse, knowing each coin represents a risk, a bribe, a desire. The currency of these transactions wasn't always coin. It could be tiché, favors. Remember, food as forbidden favor from Section 15, promises of future assistance, or even the sharing of valuable information gleaned from one's position within the court. A eunuch might provide a particularly desired snack in exchange for a whisper of gossip or a discreet piece of advice. This transformed food into a medium of exchange in the intricate social economy of the Forbidden City. The perceived value of these snacks was immensely heightened by their illicit nature and the effort involved in their acquisition. A humble street bun, if successfully smuggled and consumed in secret, might feel more luxurious than a formally presented imperial dish. The cost wasn't just monetary, it was the thrill of the forbidden, the defiance of protocol, and the silent assertion of personal will. The cost of covert cravings ensured that every secret snack was a prized possession, its value amplified by the very danger and expense incurred to acquire it. You've just explored the often steep cost of covert cravings where every illicit bite came with a price. Now let's delve into something far more intangible yet profoundly powerful that these secret snacks often carried: memory and nostalgia in morsels. For many courtiers in the vast, isolating Forbidden City, a forbidden treat wasn't just sustenance. It was a sensory link to their past, a whisper of home, and a fleeting connection to cherished memories. A mainstream historical fact is that many courtiers, eunuchs, and palace maids came from various provinces across China, often leaving their families and familiar surroundings for years or even a lifetime to serve the imperial court. The Forbidden City, for all its grandeur, was a gilded cage cutting them off from their roots. You imagine an elderly courtier, perhaps from a distant southern province, secretly holding a small piece of dried preserved plum, its sweet-sour taste instantly transporting him back to his childhood village and the familiar comfort of his mother's kitchen. He probably thought this one plum was worth more than all the imperial banquets combined because it tasted like home. Now for a quirky tidbit. Certain regional snacks, even humble ones, could evoke particularly strong feelings of nostalgia, becoming almost totemic objects of memory. A specific type of peanut brittle or a unique spiced bean curd from one's hometown might be more eagerly sought after than a rare, expensive imperial delicacy precisely because of its personal associations. The illicit nature of the acquisition only intensified this feeling of private, cherished connection. Imagine a palace maid during a quiet moment subtly unwrapping a small homemade rice cake, its familiar texture and simple sweetness a poignant reminder of family and freedom she left behind. Historians still argue whether the emotional significance of these nostalgic snacks played a direct role in decision-making or power dynamics, or if it was primarily a private internal experience that helped courtiers cope with the psychological stresses of palace life. Perhaps it was a silent personal rebellion against emotional detachment. You realize that in a world where personal expression was severely curtailed and every aspect of life was dictated by protocol, food offered a rare, intimate connection to one's individual history. A taste, a smell, a texture. These sensory triggers could unlock a flood of memories, a childhood festival, a family gathering, a moment of simple happiness outside the palace walls. It was a powerful form of psychological escapism. You can almost feel the bittersweet pang of longing that accompanies each bite of a familiar, forbidden treat. The quest for these nostalgic morsels would drive courtiers to undertake significant risks and expenses. Remember the cost of covert cravings from Section 24. The value of the snack wasn't just in its culinary appeal, but in its emotional resonance. It was a tangible piece of their past, a small rebellion against the forced uniformity of palace life. The eunuchs and palace maids, often serving as intermediaries for these nostalgic imports, remember snacks beyond the inner court from Section 23 would gain unique insight into the personal histories and emotional vulnerabilities of the courtiers they served. This knowledge, too, could become a form of informal power. The Forbidden City, for all its grandeur and strictures, could never truly sever the bonds of memory and nostalgia, and these powerful emotions found their most poignant expression in the quiet, clandestine enjoyment of forbidden familiar foods. You've just touched upon the deep emotional resonance of nostalgic morsels connecting courtiers to their past. Now let's explore the physical manifestation of this desire for personal indulgence. Courtiers' culinary collections. For those with the means and the daring, amassing private stashes of desired treats became a subtle assertion of power, a source of comfort, and a testament to their cravings. Oporto's mainstream historical fact is that while grand imperial storerooms held vast quantities of food, personal storage for courtiers within their private chambers was limited and subject to scrutiny. Any significant accumulation of unauthorized goods was risky. You imagine a high-ranking eunuch or a favored consort in a secluded part of their living quarters opening a discreetly hidden cabinet or chest, revealing a carefully organized collection of dried fruits, preserved meats, and rare teas. This wasn't about hoarding for survival. It was about having immediate access to personal pleasures, a private pantry of desires. He probably thought his secret snack collection was more satisfying than any imperial decree. Now for a quirky tidbit. These culinary collections were often meticulously organized and managed, reflecting the courtier's personality or specific cravings. Some might focus on rare seasonal items, others on regional specialties from their homeland, and still others on specific medicinal snacks. The act of curating this private collection, knowing it was forbidden, added an extra layer of satisfaction. Imagine a courtier carefully inspecting a new batch of candied lotus seeds, delighting in their perfection, knowing they were a clandestine acquisition. Historians still argue whether the accumulation of these private stashes was primarily for immediate personal consumption, or if it also served as a subtle display of wealth and influence among trusted confidants, showcasing their ability to bypass imperial control. Perhaps it was a quiet act of culinary connoisseurship and covert status signaling. You realize that having a private culinary collection provided immense psychological comfort. It meant instant gratification for a craving without the need to go through the risky process of immediate procurement. It offered a sense of security and autonomy in a world where little was truly personal. You can almost feel the smooth, cool surface of a ceramic jar, knowing it holds a precious hidden delight. The size and variety of these collections would vary greatly depending on the courtier's rank, wealth, and the boldness of their eunuch or maid intermediaries. Remember the cost of covert cravings from Section 24. Higher-ranking individuals might have more extensive and exotic collections, reflecting their greater access and ability to bribe. These culinary collections were often kept in highly secluded areas within their private living spaces, hidden compartments in furniture behind false panels, or tucked away in forgotten corners. Discovery could be disastrous, hence the extreme care taken in their concealment. The very existence of these private stashes highlighted the tension between the emperor's absolute control and the unyielding human desire for personal pleasure and comfort. The courtiers' culinary collections were more than just food. They were quiet monuments to individuality and the enduring allure of forbidden delights within the silent, watchful walls of the Forbidden City. You've just explored the private culinary collections, a testament to courtiers' secret cravings. Now let's uncover a delightful and often surprising aspect of this clandestine snack culture. Palace pets and their pilfered portions. In the Forbidden City, where loyalty and affection could be scarce commodities, the pampered imperial animals often found themselves unexpected beneficiaries of forbidden treats, a charming byproduct of human indulgence. A Ponditi, mainstream historical fact, is that emperors and empresses, as well as many high-ranking courtiers, often kept beloved pets within the Forbidden City. Lapdogs, cats, and exotic birds were common. These animals were highly pampered, often adorned with elaborate collars, and living in luxurious conditions, sometimes even attended by their own dedicated eunuchs or maids. You imagine a fluffy Pekingese, its eyes bright with expectation, watching its mistress discreetly enjoy a sweet pastry. He probably thought his human's main purpose was to sneak him delicious forbidden snacks. Now for a quirky tidbit. It was a common, albeit unofficial practice for courtiers and palace staff to share their secret snacks with their beloved pets. This wasn't just about feeding them. It was an act of affection, a way to bond with a creature that offered unconditional companionship in a lonely, politically charged environment. A piece of a forbidden sweet pastry, a morsel of savory dried meat, or a few precious nuts might be slipped to a favored dog or bird, away from the prying eyes of officials who might frown upon such wasteful indulgence. Imagine a high-ranking concubine in the privacy of her chambers, subtly slipping a piece of candied fruit to her treasured parrot, watching it nibble with delight a tiny shared secret. Historians still argue whether the sharing of forbidden snacks with pets was simply a natural extension of human affection, or if it also served as a subtle way for courtiers to bypass official food waste rules by disposing of their illicit treats. Perhaps it was a heartwarming blend of personal affection and practical, plausible deniability. You realize that for the courtiers, sharing these forbidden treats with their pets added another layer of warmth and personal joy to their clandestine snacking. It was a small act of kindness in a world that could often be harsh and unforgiving. The pet became a silent, furry confidant, a recipient of shared secrets and affection. You can almost hear the soft lapping of a dog's tongue as it cleans up a crumb of illicit pastry or the cheerful chirping of a bird enjoying a forbidden seed. The discreet nature of this sharing was crucial. Imperial rules likely dictated specific diets for imperial animals, and giving them unauthorized human food could be seen as a breach of protocol, potentially harming the animal or reflecting poorly on the owner. Thus, these pilfered portions were shared in hushed tones and secluded moments. The eunuchs and palace maids, who were often responsible for the daily care of these imperial pets, might also be privy to these secret culinary exchanges or even initiate them themselves, knowing the affection their charges held for their animals. These small acts of indulgence extended to the palace pets, added a charming, unexpected dimension to the hidden food culture of the Forbidden City, proving that even strict imperial rules couldn't entirely extinguish the universal desire for a shared, delicious, and sometimes forbidden treat with a beloved companion. You've just witnessed the charming secret sharing of forbidden snacks with palace pets. Now let's consider a larger, slower shift within the Forbidden City that subtly impacted the entire culture of hidden eating. The decline of dining discipline. Over centuries, the rigid imperial rules surrounding food and court life sometimes loosened, creating new patterns of consumption and perhaps even less need for extreme secrecy. Chapeau, mainstream historical fact. is that the Qing dynasty, while maintaining much of the Ming's imperial structure, experienced periods of both strict adherence to tradition and gradual relaxation of certain protocols, especially in its later years. As the dynasty aged and certain emperors became less rigid or more preoccupied with other matters, some of the meticulous dining disciplines and surveillance might have subtly softened. You imagine a slightly less vigilant eunuch, perhaps more easily bribed or simply less concerned with minor infractions as a small, non-imperial snack passes by. The very weight of tradition could over time become a little less crushing. He probably thought enforcing every tiny food rule was just too much effort after a few centuries. Now for a quirky tidbit. During periods of imperial decline or heightened internal palace strife, the emphasis on strict dining protocol might have waned, leading to more overt, or at least less meticulously concealed instances of courtiers enjoying their own preferred foods. The focus might shift from minor dietary infractions to larger political threats, allowing smaller breaches to go unnoticed. Conversely, a particularly zealous or paranoid emperor could suddenly reimpose strict rules, forcing the secret snack culture back into deeper hiding. Imagine a subtle shift in court behavior where a small personal tea cake is openly consumed in a courtyard, a luxury that would have been unimaginable a century prior. Historians still argue whether the perceived loosening of dining discipline was a sign of imperial weakness or simply a pragmatic adjustment to changing social norms and the practical difficulties of enforcing absolute control over vast numbers of people. Perhaps it was a pendulum swing dictated by the personality of the reigning emperor. You realize that this decline wasn't a sudden collapse, but a gradual erosion. It could manifest in various ways: less frequent inspections of personal quarters, a slight increase in the approved variety of foods available to lower-ranking staff, or a tacit understanding that certain minor offenses would be overlooked for the sake of morale or convenience. This created more breathing room for courtiers to indulge their covert cravings. You might see a slightly larger, less carefully wrapped bundle of snacks, hinting at a reduced fear of immediate discovery. The rise of certain powerful factions, remember, palace faction snack wars from Section 18, could also influence dining discipline. A dominant faction might unofficially permit its favored members more culinary leeway, reinforcing their status and creating a sense of privileged indulgence. This subtle shift in palace dynamics meant that the secret in secret snacks might have become less about life or death concealment and more about maintaining an illusion of propriety. The allure of the forbidden might still be there, but the immediate threat of punishment could be less severe. The decline of dining discipline was a slow, quiet transformation that allowed the human desire for personal culinary freedom to gradually assert itself, adding another layer of evolution to the Forbidden City's fascinating food narrative. You've just observed how the slow decline of dining discipline subtly reshaped the secret snack landscape. Now let's consider how we piece together these hidden culinary narratives in the first place by examining subtle hints left behind. Literary clues to hidden habits. For all their secrecy, the forbidden snacks of the Forbidden City sometimes slipped into the historical record, tucked away in personal memoirs, poetry, or official documents, offering tantalizing glimpses into this clandestine world. A Barton mainstream historical fact is that despite the strict protocols of imperial courts, a vast body of literature, including personal writings, poetry, and even administrative records, survives from various Chinese dynasties. While official histories rarely detail illicit snacking, more intimate accounts or casual mentions can inadvertently reveal such practices. You imagine poring over an ancient scroll, a seemingly mundane courtier's diary, when a fleeting reference to a particularly fragrant preserved plum or a small comforting cake catches your eye, a tiny window into a hidden moment. He probably thought his diary was just for recording official events, not for detailing his covert cookie consumption. Now for a quirky tidbit. Sometimes the literary clues aren't direct admissions of secret snacking, but subtle allusions or euphemisms. A poem might speak of the taste of home secretly savored, or a memoir might mention a small joy at day's end shared with trusted ears. These veiled references, understood by contemporaries who knew the palace's unspoken rules, serve as tantalizing hints for modern historians. Imagine a poet wistfully describing a crimson fruit, a whisper of autumn's defiance. And you realize he's not just talking about a hawthorn berry, but a smuggled one. Historians still argue whether the scarcity of explicit literary evidence for secret snacking means it was genuinely rare, or if the pervasive fear of exposure led authors to deliberately use ambiguous language to avoid implicating themselves or others. Perhaps it was a calculated literary dance around a dangerous truth. You realize that these literary clues are invaluable because official records focused on the emperor's meals, state banquets, and formal protocols. They tell us what should have been eaten, not necessarily what was eaten in quiet private moments. Personal memoirs on the product of reflection, and often written long after the fact, offer a more authentic, if still cautious, perspective. You hear the faint rustle of ancient paper revealing the mundane yet profound details of a past life. The context of these mentions is crucial. A courtier writing about the loneliness of palace life might mention a specific comfort food that brought a momentary solace. A eunuch detailing the complexities of palace logistics might inadvertently reveal channels through which illicit goods could pass. These fleeting references, often unintentional, serve as forensic evidence of a hidden culinary culture. Even imperial edicts forbidding certain practices, including unauthorized food consumption, ironically provide evidence that such practices existed and were problematic enough to warrant formal prohibition. These prohibitions, while intended to suppress, instead confirm the persistent human desire for what was forbidden. The literary clues, like crumbs left on a forgotten plate, invite us to reconstruct the rich secret history of the Forbidden City's dining habits, proving that even the most hidden indulgences can leave their mark on the pages of history. You've just uncovered the tantalizing literary clues that whisper tales of hidden snacking in the Forbidden City. Now, as our journey through these clandestine culinary worlds draws to a close, let's reflect on the profound, timeless truth at the heart of it all. The enduring allure of forbidden bites. From ancient palaces to modern lives, the human desire for a secret indulgent treat remains a powerful, almost universal impulse. A tantouin, mainstream historical fact, is that human beings are fundamentally driven by desire, and the act of consuming food, especially something pleasurable or hard-to-get, triggers deep-seated reward pathways in the brain. The Forbidden City, with its extreme controls and prohibitions, inadvertently created a perfect psychological laboratory for this phenomenon. You reflect on your own little indulgences, those secret chocolates or late-night crisps you sneak. He probably thought the biggest secret in the Forbidden City wasn't political intrigue, but where everyone hid their favorite snacks. Now for a quirky tidbit. The act of consuming a forbidden snack isn't just about the taste, it's about the thrill of transgression, the small assertion of autonomy, and the enhanced pleasure derived from breaking a rule. The Forbidden City amplified this forbidden fruit effect exponentially. A simple dried plum, if smuggled at great risk, tasted infinitely sweeter than an officially sanctioned imperial delicacy. This added psychological layer transformed mundane food into a symbol of personal freedom and defiance against an overwhelming system. Imagine a courtier for a fleeting moment, feeling like the most powerful person in the palace simply because he was enjoying a secretly acquired sesame cake. Historians still argue whether the allure of forbidden snacks was primarily a psychological response to control, or if it also had deeper roots in human evolutionary drives for novel or nutrient-dense foods. Perhaps it was a complex interplay of mind-body and social conditioning. You realize that the Forbidden City's elaborate food controls intended to enforce order and imperial power actually fueled an underground culinary culture. The very act of forbidding something made it more desirable, turning ordinary snacks into prized treasures. This constant tension between control and craving created a fascinating tapestry of human behavior. You can almost feel the delicious thrill of unwrapping a clandestine treat, the world narrowing to that single, perfect, illicit bite. The stories of secret snacks transcend their historical context. They speak to the universal human experience of seeking comfort, asserting individuality, and finding small moments of pleasure even in the most restrictive environments. Whether it was a courtier longing for a regional taste of home, remember Section 8, regional flavors illicitly imported, a palace child craving sweets. Remember Section 20, children of the palace and their treats, or a high-ranking eunuch using food as a favor. Remember Section 15, food as forbidden favor. The underlying impulse was the same, the irresistible allure of a forbidden bite. This enduring human desire for hidden indulgences serves as a powerful reminder that even the most formidable walls and strictest rules cannot entirely suppress the spirit of personal pleasure and defiance. The secret snacks of the Forbidden City's courtiers are more than just historical footnotes. They are delicious echoes of a timeless truth about human nature, whispering tales of individual desires, triumphing, however briefly, over imperial control. As the opulent yet often lonely world of the Forbidden City begins to recede from your mind, the intricate dance of secrets, power, and delicious forbidden bites gently fades. The rustle of silken robes, the hushed whispers of clandestine exchanges, the faint aromas of smuggled delicacies. They all soften, becoming mere whispers on the edge of your consciousness. You're no longer a hidden courtier. You're safe and warm in your own bed. The grand gates, the watchful eunuchs, the silent tensions over a coveted suite, all are distant dreams. Let the vivid details melt away, leaving only a soothing sense of wonder at the ingenuity and resilience of those who found small joys in the most unexpected places. Your breath flows easily, deeply, guiding you into a quiet, comforting stillness. The allure of forbidden bites settles into a peaceful memory, and you drift softly into sweet, sweet dreams. Sweet dreams!